Spain's flood death toll rises to at least 205 as the country braces for more rain.
The offices of the UN Aid Agency for Palestinians are damaged in an Israeli raid on a refugee camp in the West Bank.
Donald Trump and Kamala Harris campaign in the western part of the U.S., crisscrossing the key swing states of Arizona and Nevada ahead of Tuesday's election. Flood-hit regions in Spain are bracing for more rains on Friday as authorities said hundreds of soldiers have been deployed to assist in rescue efforts. The latest comes after devastating flash floods killed at least 205 people in the nation's worst natural disaster in decades. Residents in the hardest hit eastern province of Valencia are counting their losses.
Estamos vivos los cuatro, pero lo hemos perdido todo. Toda la vivienda, el coche, son cosas materiales, pero todo, nuestra documentación, todo.
El ayuntamiento simplemente a las 5 de la tarde o algo así dijo que iba crecido el barranco, pero que estaba todo controlado. Estábamos tranquilos en casa, que como no pasaba nada, pues yo terminé de trabajar y estaba paseando el perro tranquilamente.
Meanwhile, flood survivors on Thursday queued for food and water in the battered town of Paiporta. The city on the southern outskirts of Valencia was devastated by a sudden wave of mud almost 2 meters high. Residents said the water came without warning on Tuesday. Authorities say they've now issued red warnings for areas in southwest Spain near the border with Portugal. Heavy rainstorms in the early hours of Friday flooded parts of the city and nearby areas.
Dramatic flooding in Spain is a reminder that Europe is not immune to extreme weather events. According to a report by Imperial College London, 3 of the deadliest such events in the last 20 years have hit the continent. The document links climate change with the intensification of these events and the potential risk of more casualties.
While we can't say that extreme weather events are caused purely by climate change, we know that the severity of them is massively enhanced by climate change.
The heat waves of 2022 and 2023 claimed almost 90,000 victims in Europe, according to the report. However, researchers are also cautious about the figures, pointing out that it is more difficult to measure the mortality caused by a heat wave than in the case of floods, but that solutions do exist to prevent such disasters.
We should be able to prepare for these events. So if you've got heat waves, we should be able to have early heat warnings to tell people not to go out, to try and stay in cool places, to drink more water. When there's flooding coming, we know that we can issue flood warnings, and if people follow those flood warnings and they may have to evacuate the areas that are likely to be affected, it can take them out of harm's way and it can massively reduce the mortality from these events.
This report was published a few days before the opening of COP29, the International Climate Conference. The UN has also pointed out that on this current course, the increase in temperature is likely to exceed 3 degrees before the end of the century.
The offices of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees have been heavily damaged during an Israeli raid in a West Bank refugee camp. The official Palestinian news agency alleged Israeli military bulldozers had partially demolished the UNRWA building. However, the Israeli military denied it damaged the building in the Nur Shams refugee camp. It said militants had planted explosives nearby and set them off to attack Israeli troops, and that the blast had likely damaged the building. The incident comes after Israel's parliament passed laws this week effectively banning UNRWA's operations in Israel and the Palestinian territories. Israel accuses the agency of turning a blind eye to militants among its staff, a claim UNRWA denies. The law comes into effect in 3 months.
So we say this very, very clearly. UNRWA is part of the past. It's part of the problem. UNRWA members took part in this massacre. Now it's time for the international community, first and foremost the United Nations themselves, to rethink and to do what's right in order to really be of help to Palestinians, instead of just sticking to their former ideas, which were an UNRWA which was infiltrated, taken over, and eventually massively misused by the terrorists of Hamas.
Multiple UN agencies have rallied around UNRWA, calling it the backbone of the world body's aid activities in Gaza and other Palestinian areas. UNRWA provides education, healthcare and emergency aid to millions of Palestinian refugees from the 1948 war surrounding Israel's creation. Refugee families make up the majority of Gaza's population. The Biden administration has said around 8,000 soldiers from North Korea are now in Kursk preparing to help Russia fight against Ukrainian troops. Moscow and Pyongyang have deepened military cooperation in recent months. Kyiv has long accused North Korea of supplying Russia with weapons and ammunition. And earlier this year, both countries signed a mutual defense pact.
Russia's actions with respect to the DPRK are not only dangerous, but they are antithetical to its responsibility as a permanent member of this UN Security Council. Russia's military cooperation with the DPRK violates multiple UN Security Council resolutions, which prohibit both procuring DPRK arms and providing military training.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said that while North Korean troops have been deployed to Kursk, they've not yet taken part in any hostilities.
We understand all the risks.
North Korea's move to deepen its relationship with Russia has raised concerns around the world about how that may expand the war in Ukraine. There are also questions about what new military technologies North Korea might get from Russia in exchange for the deployment. At least 5 people have been killed and 4 others injured in a gas explosion at a residential building in southern Russia. The blast happened in the city of Cherkessk, in a region which borders Georgia, about 1,300 kilometers south of the capital, Moscow. Emergency officials said the explosion partially destroyed 2 upper stories of a 5-story residential building.
Хлопок сильный, а потом просто понять не могу, все начало сыпаться с потолка на лицо, видно стекло вот тоже. Я руками прикрываюсь, муж в комнате в соседней. Я говорю, я вообще думала, что это сон.
Emergency responders say they fear what's left of the building could crumble, potentially harming more people. Russian law enforcement has launched a criminal probe suspecting safety violations. Gas explosions in residential buildings are fairly common in Russia. In August, a gas explosion destroyed a section of a 5-story residential building in the Ural Mountains, killing 11 people. The state news agency TASS said at the time that between the beginning of 2022 and August 2024, at least 7 such explosions occurred, killing more than 50 people in total.
5 people, including teenagers, were seriously injured in a shootout after drug-related violence, which involved 50 to 60 people, broke out in Place Coimbra in the western French city of Poitiers.
Ce qu'on sait ensuite, c'est qu'il y a eu cette fusillade qui a impliqué un certain nombre de personnes, mais beaucoup moins que ce que peuvent laisser entendre certains médias. Et c'était la place Coimbra, c'était une place publique, donc il y avait des gens en terrasse, il y avait des gens qui fêtaient Halloween avec la maison de quartier juste à côté. Mais
on était dans un quartier qui était agréable. Au début, c'était bien. Moi, j'ai vu le centre commercial se construire, tout allait bien, et puis on était bien. Les enfants, tout le monde allait bien, et maintenant, ça se dégrade de plus en plus. C'est affreux.
There has been a rising concern in drug-related violence in France, particularly in cities outside of main hubs like Marseille and Paris. The city's mayor said the new episode of violence is unacceptable for the neighborhood and has promised police reinforcement.
North Korean television broadcasted footage of the country's latest giant missile test. Their state news agency claimed the missile flew thousands of kilometers into the sky and into space before falling into the sea east of the country. In recent years, North Korea has reported steady advancement in its efforts to obtain nuclear-tipped missiles. Many experts believe North Korea likely has missiles that can deliver nuclear strikes on South Korea, but is yet to possess nukes that could travel to places like mainland US.
Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris campaigned in the western part of the U.S., crisscrossing the key swing states of Arizona and Nevada. Trump appeared with far-right media personality Tucker Carlson in Arizona and claimed to be ahead in the polls race. The Republican candidate said he was heading for great victory.
I think it'll go down as one of the greatest victories of all time. So we're gonna have an exciting time.
Trump's appearance in Glendale followed earlier stops in New Mexico and Nevada, where thousands of supporters showed up. Meanwhile, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris took her campaign to a Las Vegas rally.
And we have work to do, but we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work is joyful work. And make no mistake, we will win.
Earlier, Harris introduced Jennifer Lopez, who rallied voters in support of the U.S. vice president.
I am an actor and an entertainer, and I like Hollywood endings. I like when the good guy, or in this case, the good girl, wins.
The presidential election will be held on Tuesday, 5 November in the U.S. Already, more than 65 million people have cast their ballots in the race as of October 31.
Euronews. The news.